Welcome to this deep dive into a hotly debated topic, the potential link between Jesus and the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's really a conversation that gets you thinking about history and faith, in unexpected ways.
I'm all set. It's intriguing to ask if these ancient texts have any direct bearing on the figure of Jesus, isn't it?
Absolutely. So the discussion kicks off with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls between 1947 and 1956 near Qumran. These texts include biblical manuscripts and some really radical apocalyptic writings, dating roughly from 250 BCE to about 70 CE. That's pretty much the same era Jesus lived in.
Right. That timing alone creates an atmosphere bursting with questions. It sets the stage for our discussion on whether there's a direct link between those scrolls and Jesus, isn't it?
Exactly. One of the more compelling arguments for a connection is the shared apocalyptic tone. Both Jesus' teachings and the scrolls emphasize an impending judgment, a kind of, battle of light over darkness. It's like two versions of the same epic narrative.
Sure. But I wonder, is that similarity strong enough to suggest influence? Because sharing themes doesn't always mean one directly borrowed from the other.
That's a fair question. But then we have theories like Robert Eisenman's, who suggests that the mysterious teacher of righteousness mentioned in the scrolls could be seen as a sort of early template for Jesus, or even for James, his brother. It's a provocative comparison, linking leadership styles and religious movements of the time.
I see. And when we look at practices like ritual immersion, similar to John the Baptist, it strikes a chord, right?
Definitely. The Qumran community practiced ritual immersion. It's like their version of a baptism, and John the Baptist's methods echo that. It gives the suggestion of shared cultural or religious practices. It's a bit like comparing different chefs, each using similar spices even if the recipes differ.
Speaking of recipes, another point often mentioned is communal life. Early Christians, as described in Acts 2, embraced sharing all possessions, much like the communal living outlined in one of the community rule scrolls.
Exactly. It's interesting. Both groups stressed purity, communal sharing, and a form of separation from mainstream society. But even though the lines blur sometimes, we've got to consider the other side of the coin.
Right, because there are some clear arguments opposing a direct connection. For starters, none of the scrolls actually mention Jesus, or even any early Christian figures.
True, that silence is a big stumbling block. I mean, if Christianity grew out of the Qumran movement, you'd expect at least a few traces, wouldn't you? The absence of a direct reference poses a strong counter-argument.
And then there's the matter of messianic expectations. The Qumran sect anticipated two distinct messiahs, whereas Jesus is portrayed as a singular, unique figure.
Right. Imagine having two blueprints for a savior, one strictly adhering to the Torah, and then this dynamic figure who bends some norms. These differences suggest fundamentally divergent religious visions.
And another interesting point is about the attitude towards outsiders. The Essenes at Qumran were pretty isolationist and exclusive, whereas Jesus reached out to sinners, Samaritans, and essentially everyone.
Precisely. That inclusivity was central to Jesus' message, which stands in stark contrast to the more closed, almost insular nature of the Qumran community. It shows a deliberate break from their mindset.
What about their view on final judgment and warfare? Both had apocalyptic visions, but the scrolls envision a literal cosmic war, don't they?
Yes, they do. The scrolls depict a very physical battle between light and darkness, while Jesus emphasized an inner spiritual transformation and a kingdom not of this world.
Right.
That symbolic shift really points to different doctrines.
And scholars like John Collins and James Charlesworth have pushed back against drawing too direct a line. They warn that similarities might be just a common cultural environment rather than a direct influence.
Absolutely. They caution us against what I'd call fictional lines of influence. The idea is that while both groups drew from the same well of apocalyptic Jewish thought, it doesn't prove a causal connection between the texts and Jesus' teachings. It's more about shared context than shared lineage.
So, in a way, the scrolls provide a background narrative, a glimpse into the religious, political, and social tensions of the time, rather than a blueprint directly feeding into early Christianity, do you think?
I do think that's the middle ground most experts agree on today. The DSS reflect the same broader mindset that permeated Second Temple Judaism. They give us context, not direct evidence of a connection. It's the stage on which many religious ideas
Yeah.
were being developed.
Even Bart Ehrman chimes in on this. He points out that the scrolls show us what people were thinking during that era, ideas that certainly would have influenced the atmosphere in which Jesus preached.
Right. Bart sums it up quite well. It's like the scrolls are a snapshot of the era's theological debates, but Jesus may have consciously moved away from the strict legalism of the Qumran mindset. He preached mercy, inclusion, and an internal transformation that really diverged from the scroll's themes.
That divergence is critical. If Jesus had been deeply embedded in the Qumran way, we might have seen more similarities in, say, the way he interacted with established religious authorities.
Exactly. His approach was revolutionary. While the Qumran community was strict and separate, Jesus actively broke barriers. His focus
Yeah.
on outreach, engaging with marginalized people, clearly sets him apart.
And still, some fringe theories keep popping up. You know, ideas suggesting Jesus was, actually the teacher of righteousness, and that Paul even hijacked elements of this movement. Those really sound like, well, speculative reinterpretations to me.
I'd agree. While those theories are fascinating, they rest on pretty shaky grounds. It's one thing to see thematic parallels and another to assert a direct historical link without concrete evidence. It's like trying to piece together a puzzle with several missing pieces.
And that's where the broader context plays a pivotal role. The Dead Sea Scrolls offer us a window into the diversity of Jewish thought at the time, not a direct map to Jesus' message.
Exactly right. The environment was bubbling with religious innovation and debate, and both the scrolls and Jesus were products of that vibrant but tumultuous time. They simply drew from the same cultural and theological currents.
So, would it be fair to say that although there's a shared backdrop of apocalyptic thinking, the direct influence of the Qumran texts on Jesus is, not substantiated?
That's the consensus among most serious scholars. It's a case of context without direct causation. Jesus may have been aware of these ideas, but his teachings, distinctly broke away in both style and substance.
Absolutely. It does beg the question, how do we dig deeper into these ancient contexts without oversimplifying the relationships between groups and ideas?
A great question. One approach is to look at the broader mosaic of Jewish apocalypticism, which, well, provided a common language for expressing hope, anxiety, and, the quest for renewal in a troubled world. Analyzing that helps
makes
us avoid
sense.
over-specializing into one group or another as the solitary influence.
That reminds me of an analogy. It's like, having several chefs in a busy kitchen. Each uses some of the same ingredients, but the final dishes, they come out completely different, right?
Exactly, that's a great analogy. The common ingredients, like apocalyptic themes or ritual practices, were on the shelf, but Jesus, well, he cooked up his own unique recipe that set the stage for early Christianity.
That's spot on. So, to wrap this up, it seems the Dead Sea Scrolls don't directly connect to Jesus, but they certainly illustrate the heated and diverse religious landscape in which his ideas emerged, wouldn't you say?
Precisely. They show us how ideas were swirling around at the time, and while Jesus might have shared the common cultural and theological bet, his message was distinct. He opted for mercy over legalism and inclusion over
Right on.
exclusion.
And that's what really makes the conversation so rich, the interplay between shared context and radical innovation. Thanks for unraveling this intricate topic.